What the heck are we in for this evening?
It really is. We've got Governor Tim Walz keynoting tonight. He'll be introduced by Senator Amy Klobuchar from his home state of Minnesota. Nancy Pelosi will be before him, President Bill Clinton. But Tim Walz is our keynoter tonight. He will be introducing himself to a nation that really doesn't know him very well yet. So this is really his big moment.
Well, and of course, the nation is only just starting to get to know him, and some may be familiar with him only by the way in which he's gone a little bit viral on social media for phrases like weird when describing Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. How much of his speech tonight is going to be trying to make those even just little small moments that are going to resonate and circulate and make his face better known?
I mean, I think he has to introduce himself, right? Did people know who he was a month ago? So I think we're going to get a lot of his folksy charm, his blue state appeal, his red state appeal for that matter, and hopefully maybe color in some of the ambiguities and what he stands for, what he cares about, and what his portfolio would be if the ticket wins.
You know, Bill Clinton's going to be speaking tonight as well, to your point. Our Democratic analyst, Jeannie Shanzano, said earlier that he is the voice when it comes to the economy, making the pitch to Democrats, delegates here, but also people at home. What are we going to hear from Bill Clinton tonight about it's the economy stupid?
You know, I don't know, but I will say, you know, this is my first DNC, but I'm old enough to remember 2016 when Bernie Sanders and his followers left the convention.
That's right.
2004, where the crowd is dotted with Howard Dean signs and Dennis Kucinich signs. This convention has been a triumph of tactics over ideology. It is unified, and the unifier, ironically, is Donald Trump. So I expect Bill Clinton to kind of, you know, emphasize that, aim the party and the voters against the opposition.
Well, as we talk about this idea of democratic unity, we are seeing some areas in which there is still division on display, perhaps in a smaller form than we all thought we might coming into Chicago, where there was warning of tens of thousands of protesters, perhaps. But we have seen protests, and we've seen the arrest of, just yesterday, some 50 people by police forces here. I wonder how you view the hype around the kind of discord we might see around this convention and the way in which it has only materialized on the margins, Angela.
Right. There really has not been the disruption that the specter of 1968 in Chicago, of course, brought as we went into this week. It's also something, I don't know if we'll hear Governor Walz address it tonight, but it's absolutely something that follows him because he, of course, was governor of Minnesota when George Floyd was murdered, when the national unrest began literally down the street from where he lives and works. So it is something that he may mention. It's something he can probably use as a strength, the way he handled that. He allowed peaceful protests at first and then eventually brought order back to his state. But it's clearly something that he knows is also a liability that Republicans are hammering him on as well.
The Trump campaign has been counter-programming this convention with a different event or series of events each day. North Carolina, Asheboro at the rally today, Donald Trump, J.D. Vance. And we heard from Donald Trump's running mate, Senator Vance, who's still taking shots at Governor Walz and his military record. This is what he said today.
Now, you know what I think would appeal to rural voters and veterans, Kamala? Not having a running mate who lies about his service record. Why don't we try that?
The accusations of stolen valor are landing pretty heavily in this campaign. Will the governor talk about his service record tonight?
Oh, he absolutely will. I mean, he served 24 years. I don't think it's anything that, you know, he has to be ashamed of. I expect him to talk about it a lot and maybe provide something of a retort to the line that we saw in 2004 was incredibly damaging.
That's right.
To John Kerry. So yeah, I think we will hear from him.
Well, and it may be something that he can't avoid talking about if we're going to continually see the Republican ticket bringing it up time and again as one of their primary criticisms. The other, Angela, is that he is dangerously liberal or radically progressive, adjectives attached to more left-leaning notions. And certainly he has been more progressive as the governor of Minnesota, maybe less so during his time in the House. How do you expect he straddles the line if he's going to try to paint himself as a moderate or as a moderate progressive or
He really wants to paint himself at both. This ticket needs every vote it can get if they're going to win in November. And tonight in the auditorium, he'll be speaking to his base. This is, for the most part, the liberal part of the Democratic Party. That's who shows up and is delegates to the convention, but it's a national speech. The DNC has been bragging about their television viewership so far this week. Obviously, each night the speakers get bigger, so they're going to expect more viewers tonight than the first two nights. So this is his chance to talk to those voters all over the country, including the more moderate ones, the people that might be deciding which ticket to vote for when they cast their ballot. So he really does need to talk about his record as a House member when he was more moderate, in addition to his more liberal gubernatorial record.
Assuming they get him on in time for prime time.
Well, that's the other
little bit of a problem this week. Can we get the man on before 11 p.m. Washington time? I guess we'll find out tonight, because it's not just the delegates in the room, is it? He's got to get people in their living rooms.
But this is my point about tactics over ideology. And I think it has been a remarkable lack of specificity of policy details over the last 2 days, and it is by design. I mean, this is a big tent party that likes nothing more than a circular firing squad, right? But it just hasn't happened. And it hasn't happened because the party is united in trying to defy Donald Trump a second term. And so I don't think they want to do anything in terms of policy specifics that risks the coalition that, through circumstance, Harris and Walz have been able to build.
Obviously, the convention is an opportunity for free media. All the networks are here. We are covering it. We are airing the speeches this evening. But we know that after this wraps up, there is going to be a ton of money poured into ad buys, some $200 million just in the weeks between now and Labor Day. The Harris campaign has made another $370 million of purchases through November. How should we think about the war that is about to take place over the airwaves?
I mean, I don't think we're going to be able to avoid it, but behind that war is a fundraising war. And that's another reason why, this ticket does not want to do anything to alienate business, and particularly tech and even crypto. The Biden administration enormously hostile to crypto interests. I went to a party last night thrown by a crypto billionaire. Great party. The Killers performed.
Wow.
But there's clearly hope of a reset. And I think the administration, the Democratic ticket is probably telling a lot of different interests what they want to hear right now to get folks into the tent.
Okay. Obviously, we need to be hanging out with Brad at night in Chicago. While Brad's partying with crypto, is there going to be a presence or a mention of regulation of high tech in this convention, or is that for somewhere later?
I'm going to bet on no on that, because as Brad was saying, there's really nothing to gain for the speakers here this week to talk specifics of policy. They certainly do not want to alienate business in general, but specifically donors. And while the tech industry has certainly moved more to the right in recent years in terms of their political giving, there's still lots of Democratic money from the tech industry, and money since the Democratic ticket changed has been pouring in, and they absolutely want to keep that spigot open. So, no, I don't think we're going to hear hardcore policy priorities of any sort, and certainly not cracking down on an industry they need to be friends with.
And by the way, just to add to what Angela said, we got one indication from a big donor, Reid Hoffman, a venture capitalist, that Harris should consider replacing Lina Khan at the FTC. And the progressive wing of the party, rebelled. She's a folk hero. And so it's the kind of example of how fragile this coalition is and why they probably don't want to address some of these issues.
Well, and I find that so striking because J.D. Vance loves Lina Khan, or at least he's had high praise for her. And it's one of the ways, Joe, in which we are seeing an interesting overlap between these two
More
tickets.
than once. That's correct.
Yeah.
Maybe Lina Khan will be hired no matter who wins the election, though I tend to doubt Donald Trump agrees with him on that.
Well, I guess that's very true. We have a whole other conversation once we leave here in Chicago about the way in which a cabinet, for example, or that regulatory agencies may take shape under these different presidencies, potential presidencies, that is. Finally, Angela, we are having a slate of speakers tonight that any one of them you might be able to suggest would be someone who could introduce Kamala Harris. Her husband spoke last night. The Obama spoke last night. Clinton, Pelosi, Jeffries. Who am I forgetting? Buttigieg, Shapiro, Wes Moore. They're all tonight. Who's going to be left to speak tomorrow? Who's going to introduce her?
Well, the rumor is that Beyonce performs tomorrow night.
There we go.
I don't know about introducing, but that's what we're all waiting to see. Really, this convention speaker lineup is an audition of people who are looking for cabinet spots, who are looking to raise their own profiles. They're not running this year. Some of them obviously were considered to be vice president and weren't picked. But tomorrow night's lineup, boy, it'll be star power.